So without further ado, I will introduce Paul Connelly from Plenty Valley Christian College. Paul, I think you recently came from South Australia and you served on the committee at EdTech South Australia, which is, I guess, DLTV's sister association in South Australia. So that's terrific. So we're delighted to have you here, and I'll hand over to you now. Thanks, Paul.
Marvelous. Thank you, Nathan, and welcome everyone. Great to see you. Well, at least your name's on the screen. And what a privilege it is to be able to be here today, to be able to serve you and to help you think a little bit about how you can automate some of those tedious processes which you might be facing, in our day-to-day jobs, and ways in which you could use these tools. I hope that today will be an inspiration, more than just one little insight. I hope will offer great insights for you to be able to succeed and to be able to find lots of joy in your teaching, because some of these processes can be automated. I'm only going to show one process which I was able to automate. Since then, I've been able to do many more, but I picked this one up when we went into the first lockdown, or the first season of remote learning back in April, and this really helped me. I'll go into a little bit more in that in a moment, but I do just want to acknowledge you and say, teaching is an incredibly joyous opportunity that we get, but at the same time, man, is it challenging sometimes. And for those in Victoria, or particularly in Melbourne, who like myself have gone back to being face-to-face this week, again, it's an incredible thing to be back with our peers and also working with our students. At the same time, you realize again just how exhausting it can be, or how challenging it can be. So I know that for right now this might be a little bit of a tough moment to find a moment of peace right now as we head into this. But again, I want to acknowledge you and say well done on spending a bit of time today to be able to learn a little bit about how you can increase your efficiencies here. It was interesting as I was talking with many students, and as I was talking with many staff, as we were teasing apart the differences between remote learning and also face-to-face learning. One of the comments which kept on coming back to me, and at the same time at home I was reading Daniel Pick's book Drive, and in it he was talking about self-determination theory. And one of the comments which many students and staff both took out of remote learning, one of the positives, was the increased feeling of autonomy, being a little less restricted in things and being able to work things more at our own pace. One of the other things that we know from self-determination theory, which is incredibly important for that sense of motivation, for that sense of drive, for that sense of self-efficacy, is this feeling of mastery, that feeling of competence. And I don't know about you, but there are some times when I just get so sick of having to do all these like little micro steps that sometimes I feel like I'm spending all my time doing that and not building on the big things that matter, majoring on the majors. And that's where I think some of these automation tools really fit into the piece. They really help us to be able to free up some of that cognitive load that we might be dealing with and be able to focus on what matters. So say, for example, with today's scenario, which I'll be talking through and showing you how you can do this. The key with feedback is being able to give students feedback and being able to understand how they're going and how their progress is going. And so they can refine their practice, they can refine their understanding, they can refine perhaps their transfer goal. So that was a bit of UBD language. And in this, we can use automation tools to be able to help us achieve this. So that's sort of like a bit of a theory background, because I think that's really important to sort of understand. It's more than just about being able to be more productive for the sake of productivity's sake. But actually for me, I find deep value in this because I can again focus on building up perhaps my competency, building up my staff's competency, building up the students' competency. So again, they can focus on what truly matters and not perhaps all nitty-gritty little steps. All right, so today, here's a scenario that I faced, and this might be similar to the scenario to what you're faced. Maybe you don't, maybe you haven't faced this scenario before. But But this was the scenario that I faced. So I was working with a Year 2 class during the first season of remote learning. And because it happened so early on in the piece, students at our school get given email addresses in grade 2, which means they are able to access Microsoft Teams. And that's the platform that we used for remote engagement. However, here was the problem. We hadn't yet had time to be able to build up their skills in being able to use email. And within Teams, for child safety reasons, we'd switched off the ability for students to be able to directly use the chat function to talk privately with the teacher. They could, of course, within the general, within the conversational area within Teams. So students were going away working on incredible units of work and were submitting that to us using assignments in Teams. And I want to give them feedback, but as we know with younger students, and again, by the way, as I'm going through this, contextualize this to whatever your learning environment might be, whatever learning challenges you might be, whether it's Year 12s, whether it's preps, whether it's anything in between. I knew that if I gave a lot of typed feedback, a lot of written feedback, the students might not even, have an awareness of how to, process that, because normally we would give it verbally. And so what I want to do is I want to give them video feedback. So I'll give a screen recording of my annotations at the top of their work, and I want to get to the student, but the students didn't have email, and I had no other way of being able to get it directly to them. So that others, in the class wouldn't be able to see, because, again, if I was saying things that might be able to help them, they might feel a little bit embarrassed if everyone else knew about that. So in this situation, I thought, right, I want to grab this video recording, this screen recording, and be able to email it to the parents so the parents could then show it to the students. As soon as I started doing that, I realized that I then have to look up the parent's email, match. Again, think back to term 1 when you're still getting to know your students and whatever. Had to do all this matching, had to type up this special email that attach the file, put all there together. I thought there has to be a way to be able to automate this process, because I was spending so much time on the actual mechanics and less time on actually giving the feedback, and that's what I really wanted to do. So here is the cookbook, or the recipe, that I was able to figure out. So this is the process. So the process is I would record using OBS Studio, a piece of open source software that would do the screen recording, and I was able to create a highly compressed file with that. I would then drop that, and by the way, and I would rename the file with the student's name, and I'd drop it into a folder on OneDrive. Now, Power Automate would then detect that a file had been dropped into this specific folder. It would then go and check SharePoint, where I would create a list that would then match up the students' names with the parents' names and their parent email addresses, and any other sort of relevant bits that would form variables within this recipe. Then Power Automate would then compose an Outlook email and attach the file from OneDrive with the parents' email addresses all baked in, and would send it all straight off to them. And wow, did this help me. I was then able to focus so much more of my time on being able to just do the screen recordings, just quickly rename it, rename the file, and boom, the rest of the process would all be done. Is there anyone out there who would, this kind of concept is starting to excite them, is starting to make them go, yes, like I would love to be able to find a process, which I do as part of my work, and to be able to automate like this? Thank you, Julie. That's great to see. Yes. Oh, look, we've got a couple of others who are really excited. Yeah, this sort of thing, I know that we are always searching for these sorts of things. And I hope that today, again, whatever your context is, you would find a way for this to be able to inspire you to be able to work this out for you. All right, let's go again just through these steps, and then we'll actually cook it up together. So the first step is, I just saw just an interesting thing just there about why not just send the link to the video instead. One of the concerns I had was about whether parents have because again, I was sending it to the parents. Would the parents have the ability to be able to know how to navigate a OneDrive file and things like that? It was more about reducing the friction. Of course, I'm sure they're more than competent and able to figure that out. That was just more one of the things that also would be another great a great solution. If you want to experiment in that way. Okay, so the steps again that I did is Power Automate detects, which is called a trigger within Power Automate, that a new file was put into a specific OneDrive folder. Number 2, Power Automate extracts the student name and that's from the MP4 file. So this is a little bit of work where we have to extract the text before the .mp4. Then with that information, check SharePoint in the list for the parent contact details, and then Power Automate attaches it to a new email, puts in all the information, changes the variable so that it's instead of dear blah, it's dear Billy, whatever, and then matches all up and sends it out. Okay. All right. So let's get going. So with today will be a bit of a cookbook. Sorry, not cookbook. I've just given you the cookbook or a recipe. Today's going to be a bit of a cooking session. So this is where I will go through and I'll go through step by step exactly how I was able to make this recipe. So if you've got any questions as we go through, perhaps I've skipped over something, perhaps I went too quickly, or perhaps there's triggers of thought, please drop it into the chat. And Nathan and Kevin and maybe Daryl are able to jump in and maybe interrupt me as I go through. So, all right, hope you got your notepads ready. Of course, this is recorded, but you know what I mean. And let's get going. So I'm going to share a different screen now and we can get going. Okay, hope that you can see my Power Automate screen. Kev, could you just unmute and just confirm that you can see that?
Yep, all fine, Paul. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. So we're in Power Automate, part of the Microsoft 365 package. By the way, as you log in, perhaps your school email, you could go over here. I forgot the app launcher. And you could find Power Automate. If it doesn't pop up in this list just here, you could go to the All Apps area and you'll be able to find it there. Power Automate, just quickly, used to be called Flow. So some of the documentation, or particularly when you're searching, on help forums, you might notice that it's called Flow, recently called Power Automate. So that's just a quick thing. All right, here we go. We're going to go to Create to kick things off. And in Create, we want to have an automated flow. So this is where it's going to be automatically triggered. I don't have to do anything. It will just do the detection and away it goes. A couple of different options there for you to think about how you would want your entire process to kick off. In this case, I'm going to do an automated flow. And in this case, we won't give it a name. So the first, I'm going to give it a name of send video feedback to parents, and I'm going to just call this demo because we're demoing it right now. And the next thing I want to do is go down to OneDrive for Business and select when a file is created. Now at this point, by the way, this might be here because it's one of my more recent things which I've done. If you can't find it, just search in the triggers area for this. And trick for new players is make sure that you select OneDrive for Business if you're on your department or your school's one, because the normal OneDrive is for personal accounts. So that's just a little trick just there. Okay, now we'll go Create, and now it's just creating this. So now this is the area where we can add in all the different parts of our process for us to be able to build up this recipe. First things first, I need to now pick which folder it is that I want to be able to say, yeah, this is the folder where a new file gets dropped into, and that's where it should be detecting and it should be running from. So I'm going to just select that now. So go over to the folder selector and say root, and then it'll show up your normal OneDrive list. And I'm going to go down to where I've created a special folder called video feedback. And I've got one here for inquiry. That's just based on the topic which I was giving this video feedback for. Okay, so we have done the first step. Pretty simple, yeah? So that's the first step. Now we're going to do the next step. So now that it's going to trigger when a new file is created within this folder, we're now going to go to a new step. And in this new step, we need Power Automate to look at the file name and extract only the first bit of the file name, so not the .mp4. So to do this, we're going to use a data operation tool called Compose. So I search for Compose in here, and I go data operation, and there's that. And now I need to go to the inputs area. And as soon as I click on it, it's going to bring up this this part of here where it says, how do you want to detect it? And so it comes up with some helpful variables, which you can pick up from the OneDrive API, as you can see here. Or you can go to expressions and be able to use, very similar to other programming functions, which you might have used in other languages, like JavaScript or something like that. You're able to build up a function, very similar actually to what you might find in Excel with functions there. Now there's a very special function here which I'm going to drop into the chat because it actually took me a little bit of time to figure this one out. For some reason, detecting the first bit of the file proved actually a little bit challenging. There's effectively what it does. Actually, let me just copy and paste it into this function, and then it will make perhaps a little bit of sense here. So I'm going to drop it in there, and I'll also just drop it into the chat just here. Okay, so what this is doing is it is running the substring function, which is where it wants to grab part of the string of the file name, and it then basically goes backwards from the end and chops off the last 4 characters. That's sort of like the basic gist of it. I just press OK and it just pops in there. To be honest, that's the most weird and complex part of this whole process, was just that bit. So it took a bit of work looking on the forums to be able to figure that bit out, but yeah, thankfully was able to get that there. Okay, next step. Next step is we now need to do the SharePoint bit. So this is where it's effectively like a database and a list, kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, where it's able to do the data matching. So in this case, I've got SharePoint just open to one of my teams. Pretty much on Microsoft Teams, any team that you're involved in usually will have a SharePoint group attached to it. That's kind of actually where all the files are stored. To get to SharePoint, of course, you go to the app launcher and find that there. Or within Microsoft Teams, you usually find within the files areas they open up in SharePoint. That's another way to get there. When you're open in SharePoint, you want to go down on the left to Site Contents. And in Site Contents, this is where you will be able to kind of see the back end, perhaps to what you might see in the Teams file area, and that would usually be within the Documents area. So in this case, I'm going to create a new list, and this won't be public within Teams. This is sort of like, behind the scenes, so to speak. So we go File, and we want to create a new list. And then what do I want this list to be called? Well, in this case, I'll call it class parent details. Of course, it can be whatever you want. I want to turn off site notification because I don't want it to appear more prominently than what it needs to be. Of course, by the way, from a privacy perspective, make sure that you're dropping this within a channel that all the members of that channel would have, you know, it would be reasonable that they would have access to this information. So just be careful with that when choosing which SharePoint you want to create this in. I'm now creating this list. Okay. Now, the first thing is that you'll notice that the first column is called title, which might make sense for some situations. In this case, it doesn't make sense. I want to, in this case, rename it. And I want to, in this case, call it roll order. So this will mean that, particularly for situations where we've got, you know, different parents for, you know, for the same student, it would make it easier for me to match up with the student, you know, database, you know, the school's student database, and be able to keep track of it a little bit easier there. So now that I've got the roll order, next I want to do is I want to add in a column and a single line of text. And in this single line of text, I want to call this student name. When you call the columns, I generally do it so that you don't have a space there. So similar to what you might do, you know, in a SQL database or an Access database or something like that. And go save. And the next thing that I want to add in is a parent name. So this enables me to personalize the emails. So instead of dear parents, it would say, you know, dear actual name of the parent. And finally, the last critical bit of information is parent email. You can, of course, as you need to customize this even further, you can add in heaps of different columns there. Okay, so now I've set up my list, kind of like my basic database. And now I want to add in a student for the purposes of this demo. Okay, so I'll go to new. And it's the first student on the roll. And let's say that this student's name is Billy. Now I'm going to send it to myself. And so in this case, parent name Paul, and I'll enter in my school email address. Okay, so I have done that, and now I'll go save. And there we go. I've got that, that basic bit of information relating to this one student. So that's all done. You can, of course, add in all the ones down there and all the students in your particular class. I'm just quickly checking. Do we have any questions at this point? Yep.
I was just going to say, Paul, we've got a question from Julie, or actually two questions from Julie. Mm-hmm. Firstly, can you use the school's SharePoint from Office 365? And secondly, could you import this data from an Excel spreadsheet?
Yes, there is a way. Sorry, I should. With the second question, there is a way to be able to. I can't remember. Maybe it was. Yeah, I think it was this, because I created basically a whole school's reports using this process. So it was a lot of data. I think what I did is I opened it in editing grid view and then copy and paste it from an Excel spreadsheet, and it just sort of dropped it in there and populated it out. So that would be, that was one way. Sorry, what, Nathan, was that first question again?
So the first question from Julie was, can you use the school SharePoint from Office 365?
So what I'm doing here is I'm picking out one of our schools, SharePoints. I'm fairly, again, I would need clarification on this, but I'm fairly sure that I'd have to be part of the same tenant, or in other words, all part of the same organization for all these different things to sort of flow more easily together. I could be wrong on that. Yeah. I don't know. Okay. I don't know if that fully answered the question.
There was one other question too from Joanna. I think it got answered, but they were asking, do you need to set this up every time you give feedback about different work? Or
great.
Yep. Sorry, you go, Paul.
Yeah, that's a marvelous question. The answer is no, you don't. This, basic class information or whatever can be used for multiple power flows, power automates. Yeah, or what you could do is, let's say, for example, you want to populate like some textual feedback or maybe a grade or something like that. You could just add different columns, and then in the recipe that you create in Power Automate, you could then reference a different column. So it'd be very easy to, you sort of do the groundwork now, you can then use that to build on top of for multiple situations.
Paul, I'm just thinking, because it's a fantastic tool. I can think of lots of applications straight away. But Microsoft, I know, are pretty good at their YouTube channels at providing resources, yet this is pretty high end. Did you find that there were resources out there, or did you have to sort of really hunt around?
Yeah, I was able to follow, some people have written some pretty amazing, create some amazing videos, some amazing, follow-throughs, walkthroughs on their blogs and things like that. And there's a really vibrant community on the Microsoft forums to be able to hunt through. And, for example, that substring one that I was talking about there, yeah, that was a bit technical. That, by the way, don't get freaked out. That was the most technical of this whole situation. The rest of it will be fairly intuitive, hopefully. Cool. Shall I keep rolling?
Yep, carry on, Paul. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, everyone. So next step, we've done the first two steps. We're halfway there. Let's keep it going. Next step is we want to now check in with SharePoint and get some items from that SharePoint list. So I'm going to type in get item. And I want to go get items. By the way, items rather than item, because if there are multiple parents for a particular student. So it's going to match up one name against potentially many. So that's the reason why I've selected there. Now it's a case of, okay, cool, which SharePoint do you want to connect to? So now I go to here, and now I just got to find the one which yep, that's the right SharePoint. And now I select which SharePoint one, and I was a class parent details. And now we need to say, okay, Power Automate, I only want you to grab out the situation where we've got a name, the student name that's going to match in the list that we've got. So in this case, I want the student name. So this is, by the way, this is from here. So the student name is going to equal the file name which we got from Compose. So the student name from SharePoint is going to match what we got where we grabbed that, the file name. So equals is EQ. And then I go over here. So you notice from Compose, which relates to this step just here, we go to Outputs. And voila. Okay. Next that we want to do is we go to next step. And now we want to create a loop, because if we need to send multiple emails out from multiple parents attached to a student. So I'll go apply to each. And that means for every situation where we've got a parent email that's pulled out from the list for that student, we're going to run the same action with inside here. And what should it grab? Well, it should grab the value from the SharePoint. And I really like, by the way, when you go to the dynamic content, it really matches up the icon from the product the service which you're grabbing it from. Now I go to add action with inside this loop. And now we want to send an email. All right, so I want to go down here. And I've selected the version 2. Okay, and hopefully now you should be starting to get pretty excited, because you can see where it's all just coming together. We're almost there. So who should we send this email to? Well, we want to grab the parent email that was matched. So there it is. Next, I wanted the subject to be personalized. So from Compose, we can grab that student name, which is called outputs. Again, very weird, but that's just the output from the file name. And I can go just put the apostrophe in the right spot. Video feedback. So Billy's video feedback. So that's going to change for each individual email. And then here I can say dear, and I can go dear parent name, comma, please find attached my recorded video feedback of student names work. Kind regards, Paul. Last thing that we need to do is we need to tell it to attach the original file or the original MP4. So that's where we go down to the attach. Went to the advanced options, go to the attach name, and we go down and just keep on scrolling through the dynamic content. And in this case, we want to select the file name, and with the content. So by the way, you could use this to rename the select file content. This bit just here, you could rename that to something a little bit more meaningful. But yeah, that's that. And after that, we hit save. And we have created our recipe. Now we need to test. So to test, and by the way, I've deliberately built an error into this because I want to show you what happens when we get to an error. So I go over here and I click test. And normally it would be an automated trigger because that's what we said at the very start. But this time around, I'm going to perform the trigger action. So I'll click test. And now what I need to do is I need to drop that video file into this special folder on OneDrive. So behind the scenes, which I know that you can't see just at the minute, I'm just going to my OneDrive and I'm dropping it into that special folder. Okay, I've just dropped it in and it's currently synced with OneDrive, and now it is just running away. It may take a moment or two. Okay, so we see here that says, wait a minute, there's a problem. And I really want to show you this so you know how you can go about troubleshooting the problem. So it's really helpful that it'll go through the different steps and it'll show you where it succeeded and where it failed. So yes, I was able to detect the file. Yes, I was able to grab the name of the student from the file, but bum bum, it had a problem here. So we can go into here. And what effectively the problem is that the student name has to equal Billy, but the problem is we haven't said that Billy really is a variable, like in other words, like in very programming language, like it's a string. Instead, at the moment, it's trying to search for a column name that like is specifically called Billy. That's where the problem is. So thankfully, this is a pretty easy fix. So we go to edit, go back to this part of the recipe, and all I need to do, just like in a lot of programming languages, we just put an apostrophe on both sides of what it was able to grab from Compose. And now it will treat it not as like, something that's literal, we'll treat it something as a variable. Now we can go save. And let's test it again. And this time around, I'll just want to use the same data so I don't have to go and re-drop in the file again. I can just go to this one. So it's going to use the same trigger, go test, and the flow is running. We've got tick, we've got tick, we've got tick, we've got tick, and in my email there will be a wonderful little personalized email, all there, ready to go with everything attached. Okay, so there we go. We've gone through the process.
Paul, we just had a question while you were doing that from Stephen.
Yeah.
Was the purpose of the loop to send that file to multiple parents of the same student?
Stephen, you are right on the money. That is exactly the purpose. Yeah. So, so we told it to look into SharePoint to get multiple items that match that particular one student name. So in that SharePoint list, we could have multiple parents listed for one particular student, and then it will send an individual email off to those different matches that it finds. Yep, that's correct. No, I wasn't going to go through any more recipes just because I don't want to overwhelm people. I hope that today was more about just giving some inspiration to it. But yeah, maybe now might be a great chance to talk about, and let's just do some wondering about, I wonder whether we could, you know, automate this part of our practice, or this part. Maybe we could get, you know, some ideas flowing, if that is okay, Nathan.
Yeah, sure. I'll put myself back on. So, did anyone have any thoughts? So, I think there's probably enough of us here that if you did want to unmute yourself, you can. But if you'd rather just share in the chat, that's also fine.
Yeah, I immediately thought about reports, and you mentioned that, Paul, that, you know, particularly say a small school that doesn't have a big LMS or something like that, it wouldn't be hard to create an automated process for reporting.
Yeah,
and you're doing it, and basically you're doing it for nothing. You know, it's if you've got 365. The only thing I thought of, Paul, because it is, I love the concept and the idea, and but I'm not a programmer. So are there any websites with banks of samples that people can tweak, or?
Oh, actually, you know what? Can I just quickly show that? Because
that'd be great.
Thank you so much, Kev, for mentioning that. This is actually built into Power Automate, which is really, really cool. So, sorry, just one moment. So when we go home within Power Automate, it has all these incredible templates. So this is really, really cool. So you could even go over here and, you know, just bring up more of the templates. And this is where it just lists a whole bunch of, again, I'll use this word recipes as a way of talking about it, of all these different apps and services that you can see. They use these little color icons where they've already done the cooking about how you can link one thing to the other.
Can you read a few out, Paul? They're just a little bit hard to see. So
so we've got, you know, save OneDrive, save Office 365 email attachments to OneDrive for Business. I've seen some of the other ones where it's you know, as soon as you get an email with an attachment, it automatically drops it into a special file for you. Send a reminder to myself in 10 minutes. So this case, this icon means it's a button, so you can create a button and boom, it creates a reminder. This one here, get a push notification when you receive an email from your boss, or in other words, when you receive one, you know, from a specified person. This one, start an approval process when a new item is added to a SharePoint list. Grabbing a Microsoft form response and then, you know, basically running it through a particular process. So there's many you know, amazing options that I encourage you to explore within templates.
Paul, I noticed you've had a couple of suggestions here. Cameron writes, I used a template to try out getting a notification of when an assignment was handed in, as Teams does not notify the teacher when a student submits an assignment. Yeah,
Cameron, I feel your pain, and unfortunately there's not many Teams connectors, or not many like Teams functions at the moment. I've seen on the user voice, Microsoft user voice, which is where you know, people from the public can say, hey, it'd be really cool if this product could do this, and, you know, you vote on it. yeah, where lots of people said, hey, can you expand out what Power Automate can do? So unfortunately, I haven't been able to see assignments yet, but awesome if you've been able to get that going.
But lots of ideas around how to use the Power Automate to make tasks a lot easier. And I just think about all the things that I used to do as a timetabler.
Yes.
Janine suggests, could you do multiple levels of email authentication? For example, a form that needs 2 levels of signatures or approval. It's an interesting concept.
Very cool. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Even just following on from that idea, Janine, the other day I had to approve a budget request for, you know, some stationery or whatever. And yeah, how much better would it be if I could just, you know, push a button and it touches the signature and then sends it on to the next person, you know, without having to do all that manual handling. Yeah.
I visited a school once where they had a 3D printer that was managed by the IT team, like at the school, and they had a couple of 3D printers, and the system they had going, they used Google, but this would allow you to do it with Microsoft, was that when a student emailed a STL file, a model to be printed on the 3D printer, it automatically put it into a spreadsheet, in that case a Google Sheet, for the team to be able to then sort it for printing on the 3D printer. So I imagine this would work very similar. You could do this with an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine that, or a SharePoint list, or yeah. Great ideas.
Cool. Any other thoughts from anyone? Some great ideas come through there. All right. Well, we are at 4:45. We really do appreciate you giving your afternoon, Paul, for to give us an example of how this can be used. It's you know, I think teachers, we can neglect the possibility of automation because we're often in such a hurry to just get something done. But these things can be such a long-term time saver once you put them in place. So we do thank you for putting this out. And yeah. Kev, did you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Paul, it's lovely to reconnect with you. Paul and I have done a few conferences and things together over the years, but it's obviously something I would have to play with, but I can certainly see from what you did that that you can get great outcomes, and the fact you can save something and then reuse it. That makes infinite sense to me. But thank you again, Paul. I know there's a fair bit of work in doing a presentation like this. And in going back to school this week, you're probably thinking, why did I commit to that? But I'll definitely be in touch soon. And thank you again, Paul. That was fantastic.
Oh, pleasure. It's marvelous being able to be amongst the tech educator community again. I miss it from being over in Adelaide, and hope everyone has a marvelous rest of the week, and features strongly tomorrow, and just really enjoys being back. Speaking particularly to Melbourne people, being back face to face. And if you're already in the throes of term 4, well, keep on going strong.